Hello and welcome to a very special Frontier live stream. I'm Arthur, one of the community team hosts here at Frontier Studios, Developments even, and we're doing a special deep dive into Formula One Manager 23 ahead of its release on the 31st of July, so this month. You may notice that Steve's not here because Steve actually lost in another country, and that's a story for another stream, but he will be back, but you're stuck with me today. But it's all good news from here on in because, as I said before, it's a deep dive into F1 Manager 23 releasing later this month. If you do pre-order it today, you get access to 3 exclusive race scenarios. We'll talk about those a bit later on. They're really, really fun. And that's the standard edition, which is $44.99. But if you can pick up the Deluxe Edition, which is $54.99, you'll get a total of 15 exclusive race scenarios. Like I say, we'll talk about what they are later on. But not only that, you'll get 4 days sort of unlocking it early. So that's a reason to look at your pre-ordering. But as I said, we've got a lot to go through. I am stacked with notes, so apologies. Pay attention, chat, because there's a lot of stuff to go through in a very short space of time. And now will seem like it's going to go in a flash. So without further ado, let me introduce my 2 guests. Welcome, Andy Lloyd. Thanks for joining me and going to give me a sort of run through as fast as you can, as much detail as you can of all the features and enhancements we've got for this title. But before we do that, please, for those that don't know, introduce who you are and what you do.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Andy Fletcher. I'm the game director on F1 Manager 23. And what do? I work with our fantastically talented development team to help bring the game to life and bring the vision to life of creating the most authentic F1 management experience there is.
Yeah. So just a small task. And Lloyd, yourself.
Hello, yeah, I'm Lloyd Morgan-Moore. I am a senior producer on F1 Manager 23. My job is basically working with the team and obviously the game director to sort of pull that vision together, if you like, and make sure everything comes together nicely.
All right, so you've got a pretty key role in this, but obviously there's a great team behind you as well.
Yeah.
All right, as I said before, we've got a huge amount to go through, so I'm going to try and take us on a whistle-stop tour of everything. So we'll start with, for those that don't know, maybe it's their first time tuning in as to what F1 Manager 23 is. Andy, you want to give us like a brief overview of what the game is, if it's possible?
Sure, yeah, I will try. So in F1 Manager 23, you take the role of a team principal, of one of the 10 constructor teams in F1, and you get to build your legacy as a team principal and manage that Formula One team to vie for the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship. Manage every facet of the team and take control and make all
build
the
your own
decisions
legacy and see. And we'll talk a bit more about legacy because that's a bit more enhanced this time around. I think it's going to carry on a bit further than we did before, but more on that in a bit. And it's split into, I guess, 2 areas, right?
That's right. Largely speaking, this game is split into the kind of the team management side of things. So you're back at your headquarters, you're in between race weekends, you're making all the decisions about how to develop your team, the infrastructure, the cars, the drivers, all of that stuff, to, like you say, build your legacy, to plan for the long term, make all the day-to-day decisions as well. And then you go to the race weekend. That's where the points are earned. That's where the big showcase Grand Prix events are. You work through practice, qualifying, sprint sessions now.
That's new for this year, right?
23.
So, yeah.
And of course, culminating in the race where, like I say, points are awarded, and that's where your legacy is really built.
So long-term decisions and then moment-to-moment decisions that affect everything. So there's a lot, and when I say there's a lot, there really is a lot to go through. So Lloyd, you're very kindly going to take us through a couple of screens as Andy and I discussed, where we start. So I guess one of the first places you start is you pick a team, I'm assuming, from once you start the game. And this is the first screen you come to, and there's lots of stuff on this screen we could go through. We're going to pick out 2 or 3 places just to really sort of hone in on and look at like why they're important and maybe what changes there are sort of this year. And we're going to start with my favourite area when I come to work, which is emails. I guess when everyone opens up their box, you've got your emails, and it's actually a really, really important part for any team principal to look into. A lot of information's given here. So do you want to give us an overview, and as to what's new and what's changed?
Sure. So, I mean, the inbox is a really crucial part of inhabiting that role of the team principal. You know, you've got your team feeding back to you. You've got, about those elements of the different elements of the team that I was referring to earlier. And, reporting back on things like car performance, how your drivers are developing, testing periods that you need to take advantage of. and then you can hyperlink to the different areas of the team and get stuck in with the management. So this year we've made improvements to the inbox. So what we'll find is that there's more kind of what we call dilemma emails, kind of.
They sound fun.
Yeah. It's how we refer to them. They're basically curveballs, things that happen throughout the course of the season that are unexpected. They'll be different on every season, and they usually force you to make a decision about something. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to, a car part development has stalled. Are you going to pay some extra money to kind of unblock that issue, or are you going to let it ride it out? There might be some things that you can't actually combat, but you have to kind of deal with and take into account. So it's all part of making the average season kind of play out in a more unpredictable way than before.
I'm not sure we've got examples of these emails to show, because with some in here, I think maybe producer Adam's got a few on there. He can chuck up just to give an example of what some of these might look like in terms of the dilemma as you refer to.
Yeah, so what we've got here, they've also got a number of kind of world building emails beyond this. So we have these emails where you'll actually start to see what the other teams are doing as well. So these aren't kind of decision-making ones, but they're really informative emails where you sort of learn a little bit about what the other team principals that you're competing against are doing. What kind of facilities are they building out? How happy are they with their performance this season? So trying to build out the F1 world, build out that sense of competition between you and the other team principals. Yeah.
And we've got a contract, and then I'm not sure what other ones we've got. And we've got a wind tunnel one. I think we had on there was one of the other dilemma ones here. So wind tunnel data concern. Yeah,
so this is some decisions for you to be made about a facility and conditions that are going on facility. I think what you saw then and what you'll see in the next one as well is also we've got chains of emails as well. So it's not just like individual emails. You'll kind of get a response to some of your decisions from your team. So they'll kind of they'll let you know if they're kind of happy or disappointed with your team management.
Yeah, which I will probably get quite a few of. But it's not just dilemma emails. I think, Lloyd, we've talked about the other sort of world-building emails and stuff like that. And what other emails can we get in terms of like what comes in for players to look at? So like lore ones, we've seen that we've now got pictures of the recipients, which is always nice.
Yeah, so you've got your obviously images of the person who's sending you the email. It's just a nice little addition there. Not only that, but obviously the one you can actually see on screen is your driver development update. So that just keeps you abreast of all the recent, developments basically with your drivers. Clues in the name. And then everything else that comes into that will be related to the other teams. So you can keep an eye on how they're doing, what they're doing to react to your updates, and that's where you see the team principals. And it just means you get a more general overview of the world of Formula One.
But this also includes the F2 and F3 simulations. Right? You'll have emails from here about this that come in, right? It's good to pay attention to this, and we'll come back. You'll notice we're touched on a lot of different things. Everything's linked, but it's good to know what's happening in these other areas, right? Because you're going to need to rely on it later on.
Absolutely.
Although emails aren't everyone's friend, they are very, very important if you're going to be a team principal. But another thing, I guess, which is really important, is the cars that you're going to be using to race. So how do we analyse and improve our car's performance? And can you talk us through some of these screens we're looking at here? Now, bearing in mind, chat, there's going to be a lot of detail on screen. We'll do our best to explain it, but there is so much here. So
the high level of development, obviously, the car is essential to getting performance out on the track. And in F1 Manager, you get to analyse your car and see how it stacks up against the competition, particularly those teams that you're vying with competition for on the constructor standings. You can see where your strengths and weaknesses are, whether you want to like double down on your strengths, make up for your weaknesses, or build an aero package for a particular track, which we've made kind of easier for you to kind of assess using the highlight stats menu here. So you can kind of build for particular groups of races. Once you've decided how you want to develop your car, you choose a car part that excels in those parameters, in those attributes rather, and you can kind of choose, tell your team to kind of focus on certain elements of performance. So that's sort of development design in a nutshell. Then you get to manufacture the parts and obviously put them on your car, take them out in the race weekend. There's also the research option. You've got a glimpse of there. It's locked early doors, but like at some point, your team will, want to start researching for the next year's development, because there can be regulation changes that you have to account for. And if you do that, you really, if you focus more on the research, you're going to have a jump at the start of the next season. You can have a better car after pre-season. So you kind of have to make that call of, short-term gains versus sort of long-term legacy, if you like to use that word. But we've also added some elements, of course, to this for this year. One thing we're really happy about is the durability elements of parts now.
Explain that to me, because that's quite important actually, isn't it, for players?
Yeah, so durability is a new attribute that all car parts have. And the point here, as you can see, it's kind of measured in a minimum lifespan estimate of how many kind of kilometres this part is going to last before your team says, okay, it's going to fail the inspections. So, basically after every race, your team will send you an email back to the email system that says, look, these parts have failed inspection, these ones are fine to take to the next race weekend. And if they fail inspection, then you have to create, manufacture new ones. So, of course, if you create parts with like a low durability, you're going to fail inspection more often. You have to manufacture more parts. It's going to hurt your budget and your cost cap,
which is all simulated in the
Absolutely. Reach the cost cap, you'll get fines. But of course, you'll get more performance. So the idea here is lower durability parts have got a lighter and will give you better performance gains. More heavier durability parts last longer, less performance. So it's all about those trade-offs.
I think it's fair to say you can, a lot of the season can be won and lost in these screens, right? The decisions you make here and how you plan out for your races. I guess what is your long-term goal? Is it going to be for this season, or are you planning for the next season? Maybe if you're starting in a smaller team or a more challenging setting, you're actually planning to build and grow for the next season rather than I'm going to win it this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, all the other team principals are making these decisions as well. One thing we've also done with the focus, if we balance those a lot more finely this time. So, last year you'd find that adding focus did cost a bit more money and time, but it was perhaps disproportionately impactful. Now there's a much more dramatic and pronounced trade-off. So if you are trying to excel in certain areas, you will decrease in other areas. So the teams are more likely to vary as you go throughout the season as well.
I saw you can go through some of the presets at the top there, which is really handy, or you can actually go in as you were there, Lloyd, and actually fine tune it as much as you want to. It's as deep as I guess as you want to test your brain and try and take that out.
Click through the screens and get a balanced approach, or fine tune your car and do something more specialised.
All right. So we've talked, and we are going pretty quick, and I do apologise, but we are trying to get through so much here. So we've talked about obviously the email system, how it works, and how everything sort of comes back to. We've started talking about the cars, and we'll come back to the cars at a later date, because obviously they feature quite heavy in this game for some reason. But now we're going to talk about some of the team staff. And Lloyd, you're going to talk us through some the team staff. Who as a player, who are the key players in this, and what are their roles, and who's new for this? Because there is a new role in this this year, right?
So the eagle-eyed viewers will have already spotted the new staff member at the bottom there. Just as a general overview, we've got obviously the head of aero and technical chief are people who are going to be very important for your car part development. And more than ever, these tie into things not only related to car part development, but also things like facilities and how it all links together. So there's a lot to think about. So you've got those folks there. You've got your race engineers. These are the people who are going to be working closely with your drivers. So they build up a relationship over time. As I'm sure F1 fans are aware, some drivers have been with their race engineers for a very long time.
You were talking about Hamilton, right?
Hamilton and Bonner, yeah. So, these guys are very important in helping your drivers' morale and confidence and things like that, so it all links together.
That affinity is also something we rebalanced
so you've
as well.
Simulated this in here, right?
The driver-engineer affinity, we felt that was something that we wanted to kind of press home more, so that has more impact on something, again, we'll talk about later, which is driver confidence going into the race weekend. So one thing I did when I played as Alpine recently is I actually swapped out Pierre Gasly's race engineer, Carol Luz here, for his old race engineer, AlphaTauri, because you can find out what the old race engineer is, and then he's immediately got a better bond with him, and he's going to develop better as a driver and have higher confidence going into the weekends.
Okay, so detail is the word I'm getting here. Detail and authenticity is what's coming in my mind. Sorry, Lloyd. Okay, so who's the new person at the bottom here? Who have we got?
That's the sporting director.
Yep.
This is the person who's responsible for everything to do with your trackside operations, as it mentions there. So things like pit crew, pit stop performance, and the relationship there is with obviously you can see with the pit crew. And what that means is all of these various ratings here have impacts on your pit crew, whether that be down to the time lost during a pit stop with mistake, or whether that be down to the maximum skill ceiling for your pit crew. So obviously what you choose to focus on here in terms of development will impact the pit crew themselves. And the pit crew development system in total has had a bit of a rework.
A bit of a rework,
to put it mildly. So this is where you can really dig down into the details of your pit crew training, whether that's focusing on reducing pit stop errors, whether it be improving your pit stop times. And when you do that, you can actually then go even further into looking into things like focusing on the jacks, for example, or things like the wheel guns. So if you find that your pit crew is having a lot of issues with a particular area, you can really get them to focus on that. You can see the race weekends here, so you've got to allow obviously a little bit of rest time.
Because they will get tired, right?
Yeah,
so again,
absolutely.
you can't just make them go maximum effort all the time.
Yeah, you can.
Well, you can, yeah, you can.
It's not advisable. You can tell them to go in the gym in the morning and the afternoon, which I'm sure they won't.
Someone needs to tell me to do that, actually, Lloyd. But no, yeah. No, it's fun. It's a really important. Obviously, the pit stops are a very important part of any strategy, but also you've also sent in the DHL fastest pit stop competitions also in the game, right? So I mean, this is just like it is in F1 now. You actually have this in the game, so you can keep track of that as you go through the season, right?
Yeah. So obviously, that's where you might want to focus on your pit stop times. Really get them to improve that as they go through. And there's a chance you'll rise up the rankings there and see yourself at the top of the leaderboard, which is always nice.
Yeah, there are rewards at the end of the season for where you come in the DHL fastest pit stop competition. So there's definite gains to be made, particularly if you're perhaps one of the teams with the lower ratings. You can actually build your prestige quicker and get some rewards by focusing on pit stops, perhaps.
Yeah.
And it's nice because there's a whole loop here, right? When you go into the races, you get live feedback on, how every pit stop is ranking you in that race for the DHL pit stop competition. At the end of the race, you get a debrief about, what pit stop errors you had, what type they were, how your pit stop times compared to competitors. And then you come back here and you go, right, what am I going to change about my plan to try and counteract that next time?
Yeah, so it's that detailed, informed decision making. It's genuinely like what it is like in F1, right?
Yeah,
so
it links both parts of the game really nicely.
Yeah, it's really cool. We'll show some more actual pit stop stuff in action, maybe an error or two, just so people get an idea of how that's sort of changed as we've gone forward. So, again, moving on to, I guess, probably another very, very important person in the team, probably outside the team principal, obviously, but drivers. What responsibilities and options do players have for managing their drivers? And we talked about, obviously, the affinity they have with their trainers and stuff like that, but go through their development and stuff like that for us, please, Andy.
Yeah, so the affinity, like I say, that has a larger bearing on the development as well, as do facilities, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But development, we wanted to have another look at how your drivers develop. So last year, we sort of, it was a little bit less authentic than we would have liked, really, the development side. So now what you do is you effectively give your driver a development focus, and you kind of tell them what kind of skills you want them to improve on, whether you want to improve those skills that are beneficial for wet weather racing, wheel-to-wheel racing, which is a big thing this year.
Yeah, we'll show you this later on, which is really cool.
This year, short run pace, long run pace. And they'll effectively work in the simulator with the race engineer and in the practice sessions to fine hone those skills over others, which means that they develop in a more kind of organic way. So you'll get a development update at the end of every month or so. It tells you, this is how your drivers have developed over time. So it's just a more authentic, more a natural way for them to develop.
But it's also, again, you've also looked at what happens when drivers, get a little bit older, and how their skills may plateau.
Yeah, absolutely. So the development rate will kind of plateau, and they'll sort of, they won't really increase very much after a certain point. But now we've gone a step further, so as a hotly requested feature was to have drivers that actually drop off if they're not, on top form. So, if you have an older driver and they're not delivering on the track, then they can actually regress in some of their ratings. And that's a real sign to delve into those F2 and F3 results, see who's up and coming, lock one of them into a contract, maybe give them some P1 practice sessions to get their development up. Because their development rate's going to be, through the roof when they're younger. Yeah.
So again, this links back to that. Look at the emails, look what's coming through, look at the drivers, look at your stats, the development progress and stuff like that. And that's really, really cool. And you mentioned facilities as you were going through and how they can have an effect. Lloyd, there's lots to talk about again. I don't think there's not lots to talk about in every subject here, but for the facilities, how will players manage these, and what do they provide bonuses in certain areas? But they're not cheap. So do you want to talk through some of this stuff here?
So this is where your cost cap balance comes into effect in quite a few ways. So obviously you've got things like your monthly upkeep, you've got to refurbish costs to stay on top of, and in some cases there are also the cost of building the buildings in the first place. Not every team will have all the facilities available to them, obviously based on their progress. And they not only offer bonuses, but they also offer things like increases to caps on your engineers and so on. So that there's lots of different ways they can impact the rest of the team, even down to team attractiveness if you're scouting for that F2 and F3 talent from the simulated series. And it's up to you, obviously, where you spend your money, but you do have to think about what happens here. So you might want to build a new building, for example, which has got a relatively...
It's a small price tag of £800,000 there, or dollars, sorry. So it's not cheap.
And that will have, things like operating costs to think of. You've got a monthly upkeep, but also you've got to think about the fact that it will degrade and will need refurbishing over time. So, you've got to think about that ahead of time, and just how it ties into your cost cap is more important than ever, because there's been a lot of rebalance on not only the costs associated with it, but also the impact on the rest of the simulation. Yeah. So I think players are really, really going to notice the difference there. Okay, that's good. That's good to see. And obviously, we discussed that these dilemma emails can come in, and they can not be great for facilities at times. But we'll see how players deal with those, because that's what they're there for, really. That's their job as team principals, to make those tough decisions. All right, so there's a lot to go through there, or a lot to look at, really, on facilities. But you did mention, as you were going through it, not every team has access to all the facilities at the same time. But you may not always be with the same team, because obviously with F1 Manager 23, we are bringing in team switching, which we know everyone's really, really keen to have come in, and we had to bite our lip for such a long time. We could talk about it, but we can talk about it now, and it's coming in. Explain to us. I know it sounds simple, but there's more to it than just switching teams. Talk us through team switching and when we could expect to see it. Sure. So team switching is coming to F1 Manager 23 in the autumn, first release. And team switching at the end of the season, effectively, your team will say, look, here are our goals for the upcoming season. And you can make a call whether to stay with that team and build your legacy, your reputation at that team, or see who else is interested in taking you on board. So what keys into this is your team principal rating. You'll have it gives you a sense of your stock as a team principal in the world of F1. If you're overachieving with your current team, then the teams are higher up, like finishing higher up in the constructor standings, have a greater prestige historically. They may offer you a position as team principal at their constructors. If you're not doing too well, or if you get sacked, you may have to leave. I'm feeling attacked here, Andy. All right. You may have to switch teams, and then go down a notch, and effectively migrate to a team with more modest kind of expectations, who will happily have you as their team principal. So there is a meritocracy to it, and there's all the more incentive for you to build up your reputation and do well. You can treat it as a career ladder to build your way up to the top. You can succeed with one team and then try and take over another team and see if you can attack the giant you created. I was going to say, become your own rival, which would be really, really exciting to see. It's really great. It adds more longevity, adds more variety, flexibility. You can see into the future of F1 more so. Yeah. We talked about those F2 and F3 stars coming through. We're now simulating F2 and F3 championships realistically, so those races really take place behind the scenes, and you can see how they took place and use them as great scouting opportunities. Loads of data there for you, and the more that you kind of go further into the game with team switching, the more that's important, because those stars are the F1 stars of tomorrow. Yeah, but really interesting to see, like in years to come, how far players went and how accurate or close they were to like what actually happened with who becomes the next big stars. It'll be really cool to see. Yep. But yes, great news that it's coming in. There's like I say, I know it was a big request, but it's great for us to be able to say that it's come in there. Now, we've still got a huge amount to go to. We're talking about the team management side of it. We're about to head towards the race day. We've already covered off sort of the email system. We talked about dilemmas. We talked about the pit crew, how we train them. We've talked about facilities, and we've talked about the new additions to your team. And I'm still forgetting stuff we've already spoken about, and we've still got loads more to talk about. But before we do that, just a reminder. Welcome to our show. I'm Arthur, one of the community managers here at Frontier. This is a deep dive into F1 Manager 23. It's on sale on July the 31st, but you don't have to necessarily wait that long to get your hands on it. So if you pre-order today, not only will you get the game when it's released, but you will also get access to 3 exclusive scenarios, one of which I will tell you is called Viva
Las Vegas, which we'll talk about a bit later on, which is really, really cool. And that is $44.99 for the standard edition. But if you pre-order the Deluxe Edition for $54.99, not only do you get it 4 days early on the 27th, but you'll not only get those 3 exclusive scenarios, but you'll get 12 more on top, so 15 in total exclusive scenarios. Now, we'll talk about scenarios later on because they're actually really, really fun. But before we do that, I've got a mountain of stuff to go through with you guys. So I'm sorry you can't leave. But we need to talk about sort of getting into the simulation and sort of what kind of decisions I guess players have to make in real time to win positions against other teams, and what strategies they've got available to them when we get to the race day, I'm assuming. So
yeah.
Andy, if you can.
Okay, let's go straight to race day. So, so this is the other half of the game. Of course, this is race day, the Grand Prix, where the points are won. This puts you in the position of being behind the pit wall, effectively. You're working with your team. You're building your strategy for the race for both drivers, your tyre strategy, when you want to pit, what tyres you want to go with. And then during the race, you're able to give commands to your drivers about how to manage their pace and their tyres, how to manage their fuel load, their ERS battery system, and a host of other sort of tactics available. So
it's pretty full on, right?
There's a lot to be done. Obviously, you've got to manage your 2 drivers and the changing conditions of the race, be they safety cars, weather, red flag events, what have you. But this year we wanted to layer more on. So
why not?
Why not?
Me,
we want to go deeper. So one of the key things actually here is tyre temperatures.
And I think we got a video for this actually.
So we had surface temperatures replicated in the game last time, and the surface temperatures kind of quite erratic, But we've added carcass temperatures this time. So this is kind of, if you like, the core temperatures, and this is the one that really affects the performance of the tyre. So as you can see here, you've got a generally underheated tyre, and that means that your grip levels are going to be lower, your times are going to be slower. So when you come out of the pits, this is probably what you're going to see. And you might want to get heat into those tyres. But of course, getting them into the optimal window is part of the challenge. But then if you go over that and you start overheating, your degradation is going to start going off a cliff. So you can't do what you may have done last year, which is like go full attack for a whole stint, because that tyre degradation graph is going to look like a cliff.
It's not going to go well for you.
And there's a lot more, and you'll actually see it in the tyre deg chart. Like there's a lot more granularity. There's more sort of fluctuations, and that's down to the detail of the tyre temperature simulation.
Yeah, and we'll come to when we talk about some of the race replay stuff later on, how much detail you actually have access to and what you actually use as well later on. But you mentioned ERS as well, and I think we've got a little clip about how we're using ERS or the changes you're bringing in here. But talk us through what we're seeing on screen.
I think we're going to look at the tactics here.
Sorry, so tactics first, and then
So we built a new tactics area that kind of consolidates some of the tactics that are available in 22, but also adds some key new areas. So you can see a big driver confidence bar up there. That's a really key addition. We also got specific overtaking and defending tactics. Now this is all part of our renewed focus on battling. Battling around corners, cars making more use of the track with corner collisions. We'll show more of this shortly. But the tactics allow you to kind of tell your driver how risky to be in these different situations. If you're in a battle, are you going to go full risk for the overtake or to defend position, or are you going to let things slide? So really, quite critical kind of tactics that you need to convey.
Lots of things you have to consider as well, right? Be it the driver confidence, which we'll show in a second, that how good they are at certain expertise, and stuff, the weather, where they're sitting, all this stuff you have to make that decision, right?
How well your car is performing, how well your tyres are performing, all those things to take into account. And the confidence bar up there, as you can see, it's kind of fluctuating. The reason that keys into tactics so importantly is because your confidence is high, you can go risky with decisions. Your chance of making a mistake is going to be lower, your performance level is going to be higher, you're overperforming, if you like, and that's the time to really strike when the iron's hot and go for those risky moves. If your confidence is low, you really need to be careful about telling your driver to do that, because it could have
low confidence, high risk is never a great combination.
There we go,
I think we've actually got a great clip of the confidence bar in action. I think it's an overtake.
I think we
just played it.
ERS here, no?
No, we're going to play it now. I'm getting a nod I'm getting a furious nod from the producer Adam in the corner, and we're going to have a look at this. So we'll see the confidence bar sort of go up as a successful overtake, I think, as we come around the corner. There you go.
There you go. So the other element, obviously, that we would touch on there is ERS. So there's a few more ERS tactics available this year as well. For people who know the game from last year, there's now a cool top-up feature to help you charge, but not affect your performance as much as Harvest. And then you've got an ERS battle assist, which is where you might want to use it here, where you've got these cool battles around corners. You see a lot more of that this year, much more dynamic racing, and that's where you want to be using a battle assist. That's where you can see your confidence going up if you've made the overtake. And confidence begets confidence, and you can really play on that.
There's a huge amount going on. It makes it a lot more exciting. But I say it was already exciting, but this is even more exciting now to watch these battles play out and the decisions being made. And
it brings you closer to the driver as well, right? That sense of the driver having that emotional kind of connection to you, and you sort of using that to strategize for the race.
And we haven't talked about the audio yet, but we'll come to that in a minute. We'll come to that in a minute. So we've talked a huge amount there: driver confidence, driver tactics, tyre temperatures. We've got ERS rebalance, pace mode rebalance is in there as well.
Rebalance pace modes, lower pace modes, much more impactful now.
Yeah.
You can use them much more to see your tyres through to a long stint, as long as you stay out of the underheated tyre temperature window, of course.
How do you do it? How do you compute all this stuff? How do you compute it? So there's a huge amount going on, but it's not just you, obviously, on the racetrack. So Lloyd, obviously, at the same time the AI will be reacting to your choices. What can we expect them to be doing?
So essentially, they're reacting to what you do and utilising what they have at their disposal. As you saw on the clip there, they're running side by side, so they're not going to give up a battle easily.
Yeah.
They're going to utilise their ERS and their fuel levels and their different pace modes to really fight you through multiple corners, bring the battle to you, and make sure that they try and keep that position. But on top of that, it also comes right back to the very high level, where you set your strategy levels, because those AI teams will not just be sitting back and watching the race unfold. They'll be reacting to everything that happens. So, if the weather changes, if there's a safety car, or if they find out there's a better tactic available for their tyre changes, if they want to go for an undercut or overcut, they're going to try and do that. It won't always be successful for them, as I'm sure we've seen in real world F1 plenty of times. But they will constantly reassess what's best for them and make use of everything at their disposal.
You sort of touched on there, sort of it not always going well. I think we do have some footage of when it doesn't go quite as to plan. I think we have one that's called, says play crashes and spins. So I think we should play crashes and spins. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so obviously crashes can occur in Formula One, as you can see there.
Yeah.
So there's multiple things that have gone into this. So as I mentioned previously, you've got your side-by-side action as you go through corners. And what we've done is we've revisited the race sim in multiple areas to improve not only the side-by-side action, but also things like your racing lines based on the pace you're travelling at. You've got cars heading towards a corner. Side-by-side will now brake much later if they're trying to go for a really aggressive undertake on that corner. You've got things like the recoveries from incidents now, much smoother, much better overall. So you'll see that, and you'll also see tweaks to how the cars take damage in certain areas and things like that. So that goes hand in hand with the car improvements, which is really nice to see. And also there's many little things that go into this, such as DRS overtakes on straights have been improved. The cars are a bit less snappy in how they defend and go for overtakes now. And the race sim team have done a fantastic job on just making all these little improvements all the way across the simulation. And
the races feel much more dynamic now.
Absolutely,
all these things really add to make the game more dynamic. And the AI, the AI was a big community request, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Like bolstering the AI, and they really do. You can see that they
careful what you wish for. All right.
Exactly. They really push to chase you down, and they use their resources much more wisely now.
Cool. And then obviously one of the things that we were remiss not to show is some of the pit stop stuff. We did talk about it earlier on, and Lloyd, talk us through what we're going to see. I think we might be seeing an error here when this happens.
Yeah, so this is going to be a pit stop with Valtteri Bottas. Obviously, he's coming into the pits. You've got your pit stop timer down the bottom there, which allows you to see if you've perhaps had a slow pit or maybe even a mistake. But what you'll see now is you'll see those pit stop mistakes much more clearly. So in this clip here, Bottas comes in, swaps the wheels over, and then, there's going to be an issue there with getting the wheel nut back on.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not new to Valtteri Bottas, issues with the wheel nuts during pit stops. But this is
follows him around that mistake.
It kind of does, doesn't it? Yeah. So this is where your pit stop training comes into effect. So after every race, as I believe Andy mentioned, you'll get a report that shows you a breakdown of your pits and how much time you might have lost. And it's down to you whether you then want to focus on fixing those mistakes, or whether you maybe want to just improve pit stop times overall, or even go back and revisit your sporting director and just sort of say, maybe focus on areas that mean if they make mistakes, they don't lose as much time. So, there's lots of different ways you can approach that. and it's all reflected in the pit stops themselves. You know, you'll hear team comms.
I was going to say we're going to come on to
we're gonna
audio,
come to
team
the audio,
comms.
but you do get the team comms when you make a mistake, and the drivers can be a little bit frustrated about that.
Spicy.
Yeah.
Spicy is the word.
Spicy is a good word to use.
Spicy is the word. So it's very, I think it's authentic to what you would expect. If you were watching a F1 Grand Prix, this is the sort of things you're going to expect to see. And we've talked quite a bit here. And again, it is only top level really chat. We're talking about like the AI, we're talking about the DRS and the tactics and stuff like that, the improved damage model, spins, rejoins, pits, animations. But also this stuff here, we can't even talk about, or haven't got time to talk about, but you've improved the weather system prediction system, so that's even more sort of detailed. And I know how much time went into this, and I feel really bad for not giving you time to talk about it, but that's also been improved, which again plays into the whole tactics about what you're doing on the day and like keeping an eye on this sort of stuff. And we mentioned the radio, and we did say we talked about the audio, because audio was a huge thing from the last game. People really enjoyed it. Kind of doubled down on it a little bit this time.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, more of what we want, really. So team radio is effectively your two race engineers and your two drivers talking on the radio using real world samples taken from races and real life practice and quality sessions. So people loved this last year. We loved it. It really gave you that sense of being immersed in the action, being behind the pit wall. So we, like you say, we doubled down on it. We got another year worth of kind of harvesting of new up-to-date team radio samples, and we've got about 3 to 4 times as much as we had last time.
Some more then.
Yeah. So the variety is much greater. There's less repetition than we would have seen last time around, or would have heard last time around, and there's more specificity. So there's cool, with the pit stops. Your engineer might tell you who you're going to be battling when you come out of the pit lane. You get updates on who's behind you, who's in front of you throughout the race. You get told when you're going into the optimal temperature window. Things that reinforce the new mechanics as well. So it's a really immersive system. We're happy to keep building on it. Keep building out that immersion, and it's super
But
fun.
I'm right, so you also get audio in the replays as well, right, for other teams. So you'll hear what's going through some of the replays. You'll get some of their chatter, right? So you'll hear what
absolutely.
they're saying.
So it's conspicuous, really, that you tend to hear obviously your own racing engineers and drivers in a race. But now, if you watch the replays of some of the other drivers having accidents, then you'll occasionally hear some spicy comms from them as they spin out or what have you. So just again builds that flavour of the competitors who you're out there on track with, and what's going on for them, building out that world.
I have to say it's. I really enjoyed it last year. This year it's when we sat through we are very lucky to sit through the milestones that you guys very kindly present to us. We were just like, there's a lot in here, and it's really fun to listen to the sort of the variation that you've got in there, especially for the other teams. Now audio is one side of it, but I can't. I think we can all agree it looks stunning. I mean, there's no denying that. What's changed? Have you ratcheted this from 10 to 11? What have we done that's different? I mean, we did see a sneak peek of the helmet cam, but there's more than just that. But the helmet cam, I think, the one cam that Steve only plays the game in, but
so the race, so we've got helmet cam, like you say, is another level of immersion for the game. It's about up close and personal as you can get to the race. It's a I think we call it kind of visor cam, really, because you're kind of behind the visor. And one thing we were talking about, wasn't it, is for each driver has a different visor, so each visor cam looks slightly different. It's got a tint of yellow or blue, depending on whose visor
the detail
behind.
that you go to is insane. It's a lot of detail.
It's really, really immersive way of enjoying the race, and again, being up close and personal with the race. So there's a fantastic new camera there. We've also got a number of other visual effects we've added to you saw some of the visual effects in the collisions there have been improved. We've also got a new heat haze effect at the hot tracks.
We might have a video of that as well, I think.
So again,
he's treating us today, our producer. There you go.
Keys into the temperature element of the game, right? So you've got where you've got more hotter ambient temperatures. That's a track where you're going to have to keep an eye on your tyre temps more than others. And you've got a kind of nice subtlety to this. So it's a stronger heat haze further in the distance, and you can kind of see the cars kind of coming out of the heat haze and building that clarity as they get closer to the camera. And there's a cool mirage effect on the ground as well. So really nice, authentic, realistic touch.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I saw this in the milestone, and I think I'm not sure who it was from the art department was playing two clips side by side, and I couldn't work out. To start, I was like, until the UI came, I was like, I think that's the game or that's real life. I'm not sure, but it's so close to what it looks like in real life. It's such a great job. And there's some more. I mean, we saw the sparks come off the bodies and stuff like that, but it looks phenomenal. The cars look great. Lloyd, again, how have we managed to make them look better? How did we do that? Because it looked great last time.
Yeah. So you've managed to do that with a super talented art team. Basically what they did was they went to look at the car materials and basically improved the system that renders everything. So they saved a little bit of performance there.
Yeah.
Which then meant we could go back and look at things like the liveries and improve the detail and finesse on those. So they're a little bit more detailed than they were previously, which means they look better, obviously, initially. But it's also down to details like the car bodies themselves. They're now much more unique. Obviously, the cars all look different, as I'm sure we're well aware. So you've got that now, and obviously off the back of that, we've reworked the damage system to have improved visuals. But we've also gone into details like the T-bar, the camera T-bar, I can't never remember the official term. But they've got the correct yellow flashes on based on the cars in the teams to identify which driver's which. But also the kind of details we go into on that are things like the lights on that. Yeah,
tell me about this, because this blew my tiny mind when you were telling me about how you had one of the lights for the RS system.
This is one for like the people who like to dig into those little details, but those they have little sets of lights in front of them, and they update based on the car's state, so that tells people whether it's safe to touch it or not. And that's reflected in game. So if they're in the pits, for example, you'll see them green because they're being worked on by the crew, and you can see that that's taking place. Then when they leave the pits, they turn purple. And the idea is then that's live. When the car gets up to speed, they go off because nobody's going to be touching that car when it's flying.
Not 200 mile an hour, no, I don't think we're touching it.
So, it goes into little details like that. And there's lots of little bits and pieces on the cars like that really come together to show the detail.
I think that it shows through in almost every single thing we've talked about. In fact, in everything we talked about is the detail you guys have gone into in simulating the real F1 sport. And to make it as authentic experience as possible, looking at just to go to that level of detail, to like simming the lights on the ERS system, to visualizing the different coloured visors, to like we've talked about the temperature of the track and the weather system. We haven't even talked about stuff like the unique animation stuff that you've put in for podiums, and all. There's too much to talk about.
There's new animations to that detail. The cars that are mounted, the cameras that are mounted on the cars are actually in very slightly different positions depending on the car bodies. So it's nice to just those little details that are different, and I think the car fidelity is much sharper this time around, and it's important because you get so close up to the cars with our onboard cameras. So
it looks phenomenal. I think all these details add up to the most comprehensive experience. I can't stop staring at it. So, but I have to because I have to move on. So we've kind of talked about the facilities, we've talked about the drivers, we've talked about staff, talked about tactics. What we haven't talked about is the circuits, because you've been working on those as well. There's been some changes there, some additions. Do you want to talk me through? I can start with Qatar, shall we?
Let's start with Qatar. So yes, 2 brand new tracks. We're going to have a look at Qatar here. So this is new for F1 Manager. And really excited to have this in. Beautiful looking track, lovely trackside decoration on it. And it's all new for 23. And we have another track new this year. A little place called Las Vegas.
Sin City,
May have heard of it.
Yeah.
But F1's going back to Sin City since I think the 80s was the last time, and really excited for this one because obviously when the game launches, this will be your opportunity to get manage at Las Vegas before the race really takes place.
Exactly that. We are going to show you as a treat the Las Vegas course a bit later on. I know our producer Adam has just come back from Vegas, and he said when he was out there, they're actually ripping up the streets ready for the F1, so it's really cool to be able to see it before it's there. Really,
we've got our crystal ball out and know what they're doing.
But it's not just the new tracks, which we are going to show some of the Vegas stuff and why it's really, really important that the amount of detail you guys have gone into. But you've also updated tracks as well, and you've looked at different zones. And talk us through some of the changes you've made. I mean, there's DRS changes, right? You've put those in where you can, because obviously we talked about crystal balls.
Some late DRS changes sometimes, but exactly. And we've had another look at Silverstone, so bolstering tracks that we wanted to revisit and touch up. Barcelona's had some circuit changes as well this year.
So, can you tell us through? I've got 2 notes here, but you might have more. But tell us through some of the changes that have happened.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, DRS activation and overall zones have been changed, but we've also got the more substantial circuit changes like at Barcelona, as we saw. That last little chicane's been removed, so the cars will now go around that long sweeping turn. That's reflected in the game. And I believe the other one is Marina Bay, having the turns. I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head. Turns 16 to 19.
So I'm really jealous because I've got notes to remember all this,
Is that right?
and you just remembered it.
Done.
But Yes, it was turned 16 to 19 to form a straight, is
Yes,
what I have here,
yeah.
Lloyd. So I'm going to give you 10 bonus points for getting that correct without using your notes.
And talking about circuits, we've also got updated maps. So you see the little mini map here. We've actually got the DRS
Yes.
zones now
Oh,
highlighted.
yes, yeah.
The DRS activation zones. You know, we saw at the weekend at Austria how important DRS activation zones
Yeah.
can be when you're trying to get that overtake sorted. And the 3D maps are updated to a new style. It's more in keeping with the current sort of F1 TV style of map and full colour. DRS zones, activation zones, nice little touch, but really important for managers to see that information.
Yeah, I
on the
mean,
map.
there's a ton of stuff. Like, I honestly can't convey enough about how much has gone into this. And we just talked about that, and we touched earlier on about sprint events. Very, very lightly, but I mean, can you talk us through what the sprint events are, Andy? Like, it's 6 sprint events, right?
There are 6 sprint events in the 2023 season. These follow the original sprint format. And they're interesting from a gameplay perspective because you have less practice time than in normal race weekends. So they mess with the structure a little bit. And that means in F1 Manager 23, you get slightly less time to build confidence. So you're going into the sprint, confidence might not be what it normally is. So you need to try and maximize those practice sessions. And again, some of the gameplay elements that we've added this year, tire temperatures, new IRS modes, new tactics, the confidence system, of course, they're more geared towards those moment-to-moment decisions, you know, and you know, managing those battles, those tight battles. Because of course, sprint events are less about tyre strategy. It's more about how do you manage your risk levels in the race? How do you manage your position? And come home with the best position that you can.
Yeah, and so they're there. And obviously, there's a lot going on. We've also you've made quality of life changes as well. So you've got stuff like Lloyd, there's a mid-game save.
There is, yes, yeah, mid-session saves, something we've implemented. A big part of player feedback was that people don't always necessarily have time to sit through a full Grand Prix. And so what you can do now is you can actually, you know, maybe if someone comes to the door or something and you've got visitors all of a sudden, or your kids want to go and do something, you pause the game, save it, come back to it at a later date and pick up exactly where you left off. And it's a really, really nice quality of life feature to be able to do that and pick up where you were. But alongside that, we've also updated things like the tutorial. So again, we're aware that players don't necessarily want to sit through the full tutorial if they're not new to the game. So if you're coming back from F1 Manager 22, you can select the experience returning manager, I think it's called, option. And that will just basically give you an overview of the new features or anything we've substantially changed. But also that's now a bit more modular, so you can actually visit the updates in any order.
And that's just some of the stuff you guys have been doing. And again, I'm going to move on now. We're coming towards the sort of the final segment of the show, and I'm going to talk about one of the big new features you've added in, which is obviously race replay, which you guys did a deep dive on with Steve and Bruce on the last show. For those that missed it, just to give an overview of what race replay is, if I can put my teeth back in, and talk us through what it is.
Yeah, so Race Replay, brand new mode for 2023. This is a mode that allows you to get closer to the 2023 season than ever before. We kind of want it to be part of players, of F1 fans' annual kind of engagement with the sport. So in the mode, you can choose one of the Grand Prix that took place in 2023, and we authentically replicate the starting grid of that race. So there's one angle to it, which is starting grid, and there you take position on the grid, and we realistically simulate obviously the starting grid, the weather, the ambient temperatures, the car performance, basically how many tyres are allocated for each team, everything. So basically to give you the most realistic jumping off point to build your own story from that race. So you can choose one of the 10 teams for every Grand Prix and see how you would have managed that race. Ask kind of what if you had taken control behind the pit wall and played that race out. So a really fun kind of playful way to experiment with a real race. It's sort of it's kind of like a crossover between enjoying the race that you've just enjoyed on TV and playing the game, and having that interaction.
And obviously, that's when you talk about like how you model the details from those races. That's down to like the car setups, right, for individual teams.
So throughout the season, the car performance will actually change in line with how it did. So, at the last race weekend just gone, we saw that McLaren had upgrades for Lando, but not for Piastri, and that will come through because we've taken the data from the practice and quali sessions. You'll see that Lando's got a faster car at Austria than than Piastri. So yeah, it's as close as you can get to the race that took place at the weekend.
So that's starting grid. Talk me about race moments.
Yes, there's two halves to it. So starting grid, and then there's a race moment. So for each race, we pick out a key turning point, moment of controversy, decision moment for a particular team. And we allow players to jump to the middle of the race, so you'll be in lap 34 or what have you, and you'll be tasked with a specific challenge to achieve a points finish or a particular podium finish or something like that by the end of the race with that team. So yeah, I mean, this is a really exciting one because it kind of keys into those key talking points that people have after a race. So, a key one that we touched on a lot is the Alonso one from Monaco. What if he had pitted earlier for Inters? Would he have been able to take the fight to Verstappen and taken that podium? Taken the first place. He said after the race, I think, F1's easy from the sofa. You've got to
now you can prove him right or wrong.
You can prove him right or wrong, exactly. And playing and replaying those scenarios and seeing how it can play out in different ways is, something we really love as F1 fans, and we think players are really going to love.
Yeah, it's a really cool feature you've added. I'm really excited to see how players take on not only the moments but also the race replay, see how they do against sort of real world scenarios and see how it plays out. Very, very keen to see. But we've also got scenarios as well. Now, I'm going to talk about this. I want to talk about the exclusive scenarios we have if you pre-order. So if you pre-order Standard Edition, you'll get 3 exclusive race scenarios. One of them is called Viva Las Vegas. Now, I think we're going to show you. Now, this is really cool, actually. We're going to show you. This isn't Viva Las Vegas, the scenario. This is actually just the Las Vegas track. So we're going to show you now this. I guess it's a world's first, because we're not showing it. So it is a world's first. I'm going to claim it. I'm going to make it a thing. This is actually the track in motion. I think, as always, the stuff you guys have done is stunning in recreating Vegas. I'm sure it was a lot of fun to build this track. But talk me through what scenarios are, or what some of the unique scenarios players can find. Yeah,
so the exclusive scenarios that come with pre-order and the Deluxe Edition. So these take a different approach to race replay. Race replay is all about getting you close to the real 23 season. These ones go. What if you were in a quite unusual but believable situation? So, Viva Las Vegas. When you mention is Haas are in a really great position late on in the race due to a late safety car, and it's all about can you hang on with Haas at their kind of home country race. So that's a really fun twist that allows people also to get a glimpse of Vegas early doors. Because another thing that's really cool about all these scenarios is you can just jump straight into a race, and just get into that race action with a variety of different teams. You don't have to do a whole long career. But a number of the other scenarios in exclusive scenarios are things like equal performance races.
That's the one that really interests me. That I thought was a really cool idea.
Yeah. So what if all the cars had the same performance levels? How would the drivers kind of navigate different circuits with those restrictions? So it's kind of like, again, it's the F1 fans really get their teeth into these kind of what if situations, and I think I don't want to kind of spoil all of them because they're quite.
There's some really fun ones. There are some really fun ones. I read through the whole list and all the scenario types now. They're a lot of fun, and I think you guys had fun making them. It sounds like.
Yeah, definitely.
So just to bear in mind, obviously, if you do want to have the 3 exclusives, you just got to pre-order. If you pre-order right now, it's $44.99, and you'll get that on the 31st of July when the game launches. Or if you pre-order the Deluxe Edition, $54.99, you'll get it on the 27th of July, but you'll get 15 unique exclusive scenarios. Race replays there for everybody, of course, and everyone will get to enjoy that.
But of course, as the season continues,
you're going to keep
post-release. There'll be a Grand Prix at the weekend, and we'll follow up with starting grid and a race moment for every Grand Prix as the season goes on. So it's all about keeping that journey going through to the end of the season, and allowing F1 Manager players to stay engaged right to the end.
And then beyond, if they want to switch teams at the end, they can, and then move on. Look, I've got to cut short, unfortunately. I've still got more to talk about, but I can't get through it because we're running out of time. But thank you for sitting down with me and going through just so much stuff that you guys have added into Formula Manager 23. We've talked about sort of we've looked at the visual changes, the home screen, the emails, the training, the pit crew, the new additions to the staff, driver training, driver confidence, ERS system, tyre management, new weather system, how the AI uses more width of the track, collisions, how you've simmed the visors, the cameras, the artwork, race replay, race moments, scenarios exclusive. And I've still got stuff, and I can't talk about it, and I'm going to get in trouble. I'm super excited for the fans to get their hands on this at the end of this month or before if you've pre-ordered. How are you guys feeling? I'm sure it must be a mix between excitement and fear. As always, it's like watching your child off into school for the first day. It's not long to go, is it, guys? So it's only a few weeks.
I can't wait for fans to get their hands on it and start enjoying it.
That's it.
All right. I probably should let you go and do your work because I'm already in enough trouble as it is. For everyone that's watching, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been great fun to talk through all the stuff we had to go through today. And please watch this back because there's probably stuff on screen that we're not even talking about that's in there. There's so much detail. Remember, you can pre-order right now to get yourself 3 exclusive race scenarios, including Viva Las Vegas, which means you'd be able to play the Vegas Strip almost straight away on release date. And that standard edition is $44.99. Or the Deluxe Edition, play 4 days early for $54.99 and includes 15 exclusive scenarios. So enjoy, have fun. We will see you on the next stream. Thank you to all my guests. Goodbye.
Thank you.